Frozen in surprise and horror, I thought of how, as a child, Henry would sometimes pull a string of pink bubblegum out of his mouth. "Don't do that," Arlette would scold him. "No one wants to look at what you've been chewing." I raised the gun, then lowered it. How could I shoot, with the rat swinging back and forth like a living weight at the end of a pendulum? In the aisle now, Eloise lowed and shook her head from side to side, as if that might somehow help. Once all 4 of her feet were back on the floor, the rat was able to stand on the hay-littered barnboards. It was like some strange freak puppy with beads of blood-stained milk in its whiskers. I looked around for something to hit it with, but before I could grab the broom Henry had left leaning against Fimanoi's stall, Eloise reared again and the rat thumped to the floor. At first I thought she had simply dislodged it, but then I saw the pink and wrinkled stub protruding from the rat's mouth, like a flesh cigar. The damn thing had torn one of poor Eloise's teats right off. She laid her head against one of the barn beams and mooed at me tiredly, as if to say, "I've given you milk all these years and offered no trouble, not like some I could mention, so why did you let this happen to me?" Blood was pooling beneath her udder. Even in my shock and revulsion, I didn't think she would die of her wound, but the sight of her, and of the rat, with her blameless teat in its mouth, filled me with rage. I still didn't shoot at it, partly because I was afraid of fire, but mostly because, with the carbon lamp in one hand, I was afraid I'd miss. Instead, I brought the rifle stock down, hoping to kill this intruder as Henry had killed the survivor from the well with his shovel. But Henry was a boy with quick reflexes, and I was a man of middle age who had been roused from a sound sleep. The rat avoided me with ease and went trotting up the center aisle. The severed teat bobbed up and down in its mouth, and I realized the rat was eating it, warm and no doubt still full of milk, even as it ran. I gave chase, smacked at it twice more, and missed both times. Then I saw where it was running, the pipe leading into the defunct livestock well. Of course. Rat Boulevard. With the well filled in, it was their only means of egress. Without it, they'd have been buried alive. Buried with her. But surely, I thought, That thing is too big for the pipe. It must have come from outside, a nest in the manure pile, perhaps. It leapt for the opening, and as it did so, it elongated its body in the most amazing fashion. I swung the stock of the varmint gun one last time and shattered it on the lip of the pipe. The rat I missed entirely. When I lowered the carbon lamp to the pipe's mouth, I caught one blurred glimpse of its hairless tail slithering away into the darkness, and heard its little claws scraping on the galvanized metal. Then it was gone. My heart was pounding hard enough to put white dots in front of my eyes. I drew in a deep breath, but with it came a stench of putrefaction and decay so strong that I fell back with my hand over my nose. The need to scream was strangled by the need to retch. With that smell in my nostrils, I could almost see Arlette at the other end of the pipe, her flesh now teeming with bugs and maggots, liquefying, her face beginning to drip off her skull, the grin of her lips giving way to the longer-lasting bone grin that lay beneath. I crawled back from that awful pipe on all fours, spraying vomit first to my left and then to my right, and when my supper was all gone, I gagged up long strings of bile. Through watering eyes I saw that Eloise had gone back into her stall. That was good. At least I wasn't going to have to chase her through the corn and put a nose halter on her to lead her back. What I wanted to do first was plug the pipe. I wanted to do that before anything, but as my gorge quieted, clear thinking reasserted itself. Eloise was the priority. She was a good milker. More important, she was my responsibility. I kept a medicine chest in the little barn office where I did the books. In the chest I found a large can of Raleigh antiseptic salve. There was a pile of clean rags in the corner. I took half of them and went back to Eloise's stall. I closed the door of her stall to minimize the risk of being kicked, and sat on the milking stool. I think part of me felt I deserved to be kicked. But dear old Eloise stilled when I stroked her flank and whispered, "Sue, boss, Sue, bossy boss," and although she shivered when I smeared the salve on her hurt part, she stood quiet. When I'd taken what steps I could to prevent infection, I used the rags to wipe up my vomit. It was important to do a good job, for any farmer will tell you that human vomit attracts predators every bit as much as a garbage hole that hasn't been adequately covered. Raccoons and woodchucks, of course, but mostly rats. Rats love human leavings. I had a few rags left over, but they were Arlette's kitchen cast-offs and too thin for my next job. I took the hand scythe from its peg, lit my way to our woodpile, and chopped a ragged square from the heavy canvas that covered it. Back in the barn, I bent down and held the lamp close to the pipe's mouth, wanting to make sure the rat, or another, where there was one, there would surely be more, wasn't lurking, ready to defend its territory, but it was empty for as far as I could see, which was 4 feet or so. There were no droppings, and that didn't surprise me. It was an active thoroughfare, now their only thoroughfare, and they wouldn't foul it as long as they could do their business outside. I stuffed the canvas into the pipe,